Okay, Facebook, we are live. It looks like the image is not flipped around backwards. Let me know if I'm wrong, but we should be good to go. So I'll wait until I get a few likes, a few people saying, yep, I am seeing an image and listening in, and then we'll kick this off. All right, we're going, so let's do this. I was going to do an unboxing, but I got to tell you, Traxxas is so efficient with the way they package these things. Basically, there's a styrofoam plug in each end, then the truck rolls out, and you've got a manual and some other bits, but it does come in a great big box. And we'll go ahead and show you what's in there. In addition to the truck, you got some foam battery spacers here. The shock wrench. This is a jumper for when you run a single battery instead of two batteries. This is an adapter for running a single 4S battery inside the truck. And of course, you've got your part support and exploded views. You can see how everything goes together. And you've got a manual, which is kind of a quick start deal. There is a full manual online, or there will be shortly. This thing is still so new. I'm not sure Traxxas even has this up on their website just yet. Let me get this stuff out of the way. Now, I've already gone ahead and removed some screws on this truck, so I can get right to the action. But the first thing I want to talk about is just the size of it. This is a pro scale truck, and if you divide the wheelbase, which is 16.5 inches, into 125, which is the wheelbase of a full-size desert truck, you'll find that this lands right in between 1/7 and 1/8 scale, and it's definitely not small. This is a large truck. Compared to a Slash, the wheelbase is about 3 inches longer. It's about 5 inches longer overall, and it's about 2 inches wider than the regular 1/10 scale Slash. And of course the wheels are bigger too. Here's a standard Slash wheel for comparison with the desert truck wheel. Desert truck wheels are 5.3 by 2.2 inches versus about 4 by 1.75 inches for a Slash wheel and tire. I'll show you those there too. Like I said, I'm taking some hardware off already so I can show you things on the truck. And the body is pretty neat because, for one, Traxxas did it all in one piece, which is pretty impressive. And the other thing is that it's held on with 12 screws, but you don't need to take the body on and off to get to the batteries and to operate the truck. And with the 12 screws in there, when you do run the truck, the body isn't flopping all around. It's really secure. You've got 4 screws in the hood, 2 screws on each rocker panel, 2 screws behind the bed, and a screw in each fender. So it's really secure, but once you pull those screws out, it's pretty easy to take off. The one hitch is up front because this bumper is functional. That's on the chassis. That's not just a piece tacked onto the body. So you have to kind of walk it off of there. And then this comes off all as one piece. I've got some bright lights going, so the image is a little hot, but you get the idea. Okay, so now that we've got the body off, you can see that this is a very realistic truck, and hopefully you've already looked at the coverage at rccaraction.com. Maybe I should turn those lights off because that is just super bright. Let me see if I can fix that for you. And also let me know if the audio is good. I'm using a mic plugged into the phone, and if that's not sounding good for you guys, let me know. But let me turn off some of these lights and see what happens. Is that any better? Let's turn them off completely. I don't know. Maybe we can aim that a little better. All right. So with the truck, you've got a tube frame, but this is not a piece that just lifts off and is cosmetic. This is the chassis. It's a structural part of the car. And all these panels are actually individual pieces. They come right out. Each one has got 3 screws on it, and it's built just like a full-size desert truck would be. So it's super realistic once you get that body off. Usually it bugs me when people run cars with the body off because it doesn't look like anything, but with this, it looks like a truck with the body off, a full-size truck. So if you want to run it without the body off, you'll get no complaint from me because this thing looks great, and it lets you see the suspension in action. You've got 8 shocks on the truck, 2 per corner. You got 2, one that's sprung and one that is just doing additional damping right here. And on the back, you can see all the detail that Traxxas built into this thing. You got 2 functional spare tires, and I already removed the screws to take those off, so you can see that there's a fuel cell under here, and it's got this filler neck detail. In the bumper, there's a jack and a jack handle, and you've got these racks of quart motor oil bottles, and then 12-volt batteries on each side, and a spare drive shaft, which is actually a spare part for the truck. That's not just a cosmetic piece. That's an actual drive shaft, just like the one underneath the truck here. So if you need a spare drive shaft, it's already on the back of the truck. You've got reservoirs with lines that go underneath the roll cage, and those are non-functional, of course, it's cosmetic. And 2 fire extinguishers. I can definitely see people hitting this with a little bit of black paint for the hose and some silver for the handles. Those will detail up nicely. But of course, out of the box, I mean, from a few feet away, you're not looking at that stuff and wishing it was painted. Traxxas really packs in a lot of detail. And on the radiator, you'll never know unless you think to look. I wouldn't have guessed unless Traxxas told me. But there's actually fans in there that spin, not motorized, they're free spinning, but really super detailed that they actually put spinning fans in there. You do have a pair of drivers inside the truck. It's a very deep Lexan mold. Usually the Lexan drivers in most trucks look a little smoothed out and kind of like melted ice cream, but these guys are pretty crisp. The helmets add a lot of detail in life, of course. They're really nicely done with nice decals. You've got the piece here for the air conditioning hose that goes in there. Lots of detail in the decals, the interior. I can imagine we'll see a lot of guys getting this piece in clear Lexan so they can custom paint it on the outside for a flat finish, do more detailing and paint the driver suits, all that type of stuff. Let me look at my screen and see what kind of questions you guys have. And I'll go to the bottom here for the most ones. John Newstead needs this in his life. I hope you get one. Let's see. How many body designs are there? There's actually this one, which is Justin Lofton's truck, and then there's also a red and black rigid truck, which you can see at rccorrection.com. On Facebook, you'll find a link to that full story on all the details about this truck. You know, I cleaned my lens, Christopher, and it's still got that look. I don't know what's going on. Zach says that's a lot just to get the body off. It is, but you don't need to take the body off, as I'll show you in a second. The body held down with 12 screws so it doesn't flop around. And that would be a hassle if you have to take out 12 screws every time you want to put a new battery in, but you don't, because that is handled underneath the chassis. And the batteries go right in here, and if this piece comes loose, it's because I've already taken out the 8 screws that hold it. But you've got this door that has a latch, and this slides off. And now you've got the real battery compartment, because this piece doesn't actually hold the battery in, it's just a cover. This is what holds the battery in. It's like the hold down on an X-Max, and this snaps down and then swings open. And now you can put in 2 battery packs. If you want to do 6S, you've got 2 3S packs to put in there. And once you slot those in, you've got plugs in the chassis. I don't know if you can see those or not. Get this up to the camera. But you've got plugs built into the chassis instead of a separate wire dangling in there. So these just plug right in. So it's a lot simpler just to get the truck wired up and ready to go. And then close your battery hatch, and this guy goes back in and you're ready for action. Now, you can see that the bottom of the chassis has got this big piece of plastic, but this is not the chassis, at least not in a structural sense. This is just the cover / skid plate. And like I said, I already took out the 8 screws that hold it, but when you pull this off, you can see the real chassis, quote unquote. And it's kind of like they built the truck upside down, where all the stuff you'd expect to see on top of the chassis underneath the body is on the flip side, and that lets you have a bolt-on body and not have to hassle with the body to take the body off. Hassle with the body to get to your electronics and drivetrain. Instead, it's all accessed from underneath. So underneath here, we've got a 2200 kV motor. You've got Traxxas' latest steel gear or metal gear servo from the TRX4. I believe that's 125 ounce-inches of torque. That's the 2075X. This is a cast metal piece, your motor mount. And the motor is aligned via a pin, like in the X-Max. So your gear mesh is preset once you drop the motor in and just select the right hole for that pin. These holes are also slotted, so you could also manually set mesh if you didn't have that pin in there. But with the pin, one, you can set mesh very easily and accurately. Two, in a wreck, you barrel roll a truck, that motor is not going to slide around and have your gear mesh change because the pin will locate it in place. And if you look inside here, you can kind of see it, but obviously pinion is under here, and this big hump is the spur gear, and it's direct drive. That's all that's in there. So the truck does not have a lot of transmission happening inside this section. What it does have, though, is this hump on the back of the solid axle, on the front of the solid axle, I should say, and there's gear reduction built into there. If you look at the caraction.com story, you can see what's inside there. It's a planetary gear reduction. And by having the gear reduction back here, instead of having it all inside the transmission, it lets you have a higher shaft speed. And with a higher shaft speed, you get much less torque twist. I've not driven this truck because I'm keeping it pristine for Facebook Live and photos. But I did drive one of the development trucks at Traxxas headquarters when I visited those guys. And the truck will just take off dead straight without the chassis torquing over. It's really impressive how well this system works with the reduction in the rear axle. And let me look at the screen for more questions. Trent asks, does it have the audio? It does not actually have the audio. It makes some great electric sounds, I'll tell you that much. You can hear the tires working and, of course, the whir of the drivetrain. So it would be cool if it made 900 horsepower sounds, but the RC truck sounds it makes are still pretty cool. Tyler got here late. Tyler, we are looking at the Traxxas Unlimited Desert Racer. You'll find another post on our Facebook page that will take you to a full article at rccaraction.com with all kinds of detailed photos and specs and information about the truck. What scale is it? Traxxas calls it Pro Scale. It slots right in between 1/7 and 1/8 scale. What would you run Deans on 6? I don't know what you run Deans, Chris, but this truck will run on 6S or 4S. On 6S, it's really a blast. I mean, a lot of vehicles that can run on 6S I wind up liking better on 4S because they're just bananas and you can't really control them. It's like a bucking bronco. But this on 6S, it really puts down the power. It's super impressive how much power the truck puts out and how well it actually takes it. So I would run 6S all day long. When can you get one? I'm not sure. I mean, this is a factory truck, so I would think Traxxas would have these out soon. What type of gearing Mod 1? I think it's actually a little bit coarser than Mod 1. Mod 1 is 25.4 pitch. That's the standard equivalent of the metric pitch, which is Mod 1. But I think this is even a little more coarse. It's certainly at least Mod 1, but I think it's even more coarse than that. If you look at the rccaraction.com story, we do have a cutaway of the drivetrain, and it's a very wide differential gear, and then the teeth are big. Likewise, the teeth in the rear axle, very big and coarse. So I don't think you're going to have any drivetrain issues. Motor must be ginormous. Yes, that's the 2200 kV. It's like the size you would find in the brushless Revo or Emax. Plenty of power here. How hard is it to run Dean's plugs? Just run the Traxxas plugs. It's got the ports built in for the Traxxas plugs and the Traxxas plugs as well. They have that ID system. ID is really great. I've use ID chargers for my Traxxas packs, and it just makes it easier. I don't worry about capacity or voltage or anything. I just plug the pack in. The charger knows what the capacity and chemistry is, and I press start and it charges. Let's see what else we got here. What's the diameter of the shocks? I don't have that measurement, but they are GTR shocks, so it's the same size as the shock that is in the e-Revo. It's a longer shock, but the diameter is the same. It's the same GTR design. It's got X-ring seals like the standard GTRs do. It's just a longer GTR. One nice thing it does have is the spring perches are held on by screws so they can't pop off. Selling price is $750. That's right. $750 to $800 depending on where you buy it. It is four-wheel drive, yes. That reminds me, I should show you that the suspension, the front suspension, is like a full-size truck's. Each suspension arm is boxed. It's two pieces, so it looks just like the truck, the suspension arms on a full-size desert truck. The truck has fixed-length camber links and steering tie rods, which honestly I'm fine with. I fully expect there will be guys, racing these things as a dedicated fun class, kind of like Slash was when it first came out. And I love the idea of just plunking this thing down and running it, and not getting into a big tuning battle to make it work like, the ultimate track prep car, but keeping it really loose the way it handles out of the box, like a full-size desert truck. And what would really be great is if we could carve out tracks in actual real terrain and have realistic racing that looks like desert racing. That's not a knock against 10-scale buggies and the current state of RC competition, but this would be a fun, different way to do it, perhaps without the need for dedicated track facilities. This could be the kind of thing where you agree to meet at a location, you and your buddies with your ultimate desert racers, just carve out a course and you go at it. Front drivetrain, these are CV-style drive shafts up front, we can see in there. They're really chunky. I can't recall the bearing size. I wrote it down in my little review at caraction.com. But it's a CV joint in there. The cross pin is captured by the bearing, so there's no worries that the cross pin is going to come out. And you can see that there is brake detailing on there. I already loosened up a wheel nut, so I can show you that. So there's your brake detail. The hub carriers are pretty chunky parts. There's a single pivot on the top and bottom, just like a full-size truck would have. Here's a look at the back end. These limiting straps are functional. You get the solid axle steel links on the top to make sure the axle doesn't move around side to side. And the center drive shaft has CV joints on each end. Interestingly, it is not a telescoping shaft, but there's no bind. I mean, you can cycle through the suspension. It doesn't bind up at all. So Traxxas definitely took some time with the geometry to have a fixed shaft be able to perform in that role. One other thing that's interesting is the truck does have sway bars front and rear. You can see the actuator here. But the sway bars are pretty thin, and I imagine that's because with so little torque twist coming from the axle, you don't need a great big thick bar to counteract that. You can have a relatively thin one, so the truck will handle like a full-size truck would, and really does. And that's because of that gear reduction built into the axle. I'll also show you this has got the 17 millimeter hexes with the splines, and it is not a 8-scale style stub axle. It's a regular steel standard style, but it's not a 7 millimeter nut. It takes an 8 millimeter nut, so it is a heavier duty setup than what you'd find on a Slash 4x4, for example. What else? What's with the boxes on the rear? I think you're just looking at the detail parts. This is a fuel cell, not functional, of course. These are filler necks for it. These are quarts of motor oil, or quarts of whatever desert racers carry. And you've got a 12-volt battery on each side, a replica of a 12-volt battery. But these are all hollow and lightweight. They are not there to add weight, and also a jack back here in the shaft for it. So I think that's what you're looking at, but those are just there for detail. How do you get to your battery? I'll show you guys again. And let me put this skid plate back on. So the battery lives in here, and this is the actual hold down that keeps it in. But there's also this additional part, and this is a cover for that. It's got a latch on the back here. You can see that detail. And this just slides on to cover the battery. So batteries go from under the chassis, but this does not swing open accidentally because you've got this piece that comes off first, and then this piece that releases to put the battery in. And again, you can do one big battery, like this big 4-cell monster, or you can do a couple of 3 cells if you want to go with the 6S setup. And if you want to do the single 4-cell, there's a piece right here that comes out, this end cap, and you replace that with this one for a big single 4-cell pack. And that's all covered in the instructions. And again, this skid plate is not structural, it's not supporting anything, it is a cover and protects the bottom of the chassis. So if you need to get to your drivetrain and transmission, 8 screws, this comes off. But for normal running, you shouldn't have to. You just put your batteries in, you've got the plugs for the batteries right here, these female sockets. So it's a really easy truck to live with for battery swaps, and you know, you're not taking the body on and off. Again, the body does come off easily. It's 12 screws, but it's not hard to get off. If you want to run it without the body like this, like it's a practice day for a desert racing truck, they want to keep the body panels fresh, yeah, run it like this. It looks cool. Does the ESC have different modes like the VXL? It's a VXL 6S. I'm not sure how similar it is to the MXL 6S, so I don't have an answer for you there yet. Let's see. What's the cost? Minimum advertised price is $750, so $750 to $800 depending on where you buy. Have to stay with Traxxas plugs? I would. I mean, you can make an adapter, I'm sure, but you're just adding resistance and extra solder joints. Just stick with the Traxxas plugs. Dan says this is 1/10 scale, so 1/7 is quite a bit bigger than a Slash. It is bigger. I made a little comparison photo at the caraction.com story. Wheelbase is about 3 inches longer, length is 5 inches longer, width is 2 inches wider than a Slash for this truck. A class of these looks like a blast. I agree with that for sure. No slipper clutch on this, Alan. It has a push drive, I believe, like an X-Max does. Tire size, it's 5.3 inches by 2.2. I'll show you that again. Here's the tire that comes with the truck, and here is a Slash tire for comparison. How much suspension travel does it have? I didn't measure it. It's got a bunch though. I mean, there's a ton of droop in the front end. You can see how much that hangs down. Likewise in the back, the axle really drops out. I mean, it's got tons of suspension. Let me put a wheel back on here. Again, the axle nuts are 8mm, same size as a glow plug, just in case you have to add an extra driver to your toolkit. Traxxas does include this guy, and that's got the required 8mm socket on it. And if you tighten the wheel nuts with a wrench like this, I find that there's a good quarter turn or more left when you put the bigger wrench on it to get that thing fully tight. So use one of these or get a driver with a fatter handle. But again, suspension, there's just a ton of it. You can really, hit some stuff. And this is pretty much what it looks like in action. The tires pump up and down like the full-size truck. It can take an impressive amount of abuse. I mean, because it's scale, it's relatively narrow compared to the typical RC proportions that are really wide and really low. So you expect it to be like more tippy and it's going to barrel roll, but it'll really lean over hard without flipping. You can drift it for days. It's like a full-size desert truck. You pretty much drive with the throttle. You'll set your angle with the steering, and then you maintain the drift with your throttle input, and you balance out with the steering input. And the truck does have Traxxas stability management. It comes with the TQI transmitter. So out of the box, the multifunction knob is set for the Traxxas stability management. And it feels good at about 50%. But you can turn it off if you want to, turn it up if you need to. I'm a fan of electronic stability systems. I think that they're fine and helpful, and it just makes driving more fun. It's fun to turn it down and see how well you can control the truck, but Well, you want to make it look like you're a pro at hanging the rear end out without having to drive on the ragged edge and keep looping out, and you can just turn that up a little bit. Why not? It's more fun. So I say go ahead and use that. I do. And this is also the transmitter, the TQI. It lets you put in the Bluetooth module, which I really recommend. I think it's $30, and it basically turns this into a full-on computer radio, so you can set your endpoints and steering rates and throttle rate, and you can manage model memory, you can operate the Traxxas drag timing system, you can activate telemetry. The speed control talks to the radio, and it knows your gear ratio, so it'll give you your speed. It's a really impressive setup. For $30 and the free app, it's really worth it. I know there's lots of guys who will upgrade their radio. That's fine, but this is a pretty powerful radio if you want to go ahead and get that Bluetooth module, and it's a lot of fun to experiment with. Let's see what you guys are asking about. It's not lighter than the Slash, Jonathan, for sure. I gotta say, I don't know the weight offhand though. I believe I put that in the article though. I got the specs from Traxxas. And they say the weight is 13.4 pounds or 6.1 kilograms if you're a metric guy. Is the rear diff locked? Yes, the differential is locked. David says he would not like that, but trust me, you will love it. That's what lets the truck handle like a desert truck. It's really impressive. You won't be saying, gee, where's the differential? It's a really amazing ride. I'm looking forward to Traxxas getting their super professional videos up because they'll look a lot better than mine. But I will shoot some action video with the truck. Now that this Facebook Live is done, I've got all my photos done for Car Action, I can go ahead and tear this guy up, and I'm looking forward to that. Fire it up and let's see what it will do. It won't do much in my maybe 12 by 15 office, but we will get it outside in the dirt, hopefully tomorrow, but certainly over the weekend, and see if we can get going. How fast is it? Of course. This is a 50+ mile an hour truck on 6S. On 4S, let me look at the box here. Let's see. 30+ mile an hour with two 2S lipos and the stock gearing, or one 4S lipo and stock gearing. 40+ if you want to go from a 27 tooth pinion to a 34 tooth pinion on 4S, and then 50+ stock gearing, two 3S lipos. So you don't have to mess with the gearing to get 50S right out of the box. Just put in the 6S setup, which is two 3S 5,000 milliamp packs, just like that. And because this is a pretty heavy and serious piece of equipment that's capable of some serious speeds, this is a skill level 5 truck for Traxxas. We're going to get one. They will be at your local hobby store soon. I think early March, someone noted. Thank you for piping in with that. And you can also get them at Traxxas.com, I would think, very soon. Have I ran it yet? I have not run this specific truck. I have run an unlimited desert truck. I ran one that had a bunch of time on it over at Traxxas headquarters, which is in McKinney. I'm about 5 miles from there. And it's a bunch of fun. It's a really, really impressive truck. I thought, being so scale, that it's going to sacrifice real performance, but you can really hammer it like a Slash 4x4, only bigger. Even though it's scale and seems narrow compared to a typical RC car, which has kind of goofy comic book proportions, you can really drive it hard. I drove it on a big lot with Caterpillar tracks and all kinds of dirt clods and stuff, and grass, and just really gnarly terrain. That would, definitely slow down any 1/10 scale vehicle. Like a Slash 4x4 would definitely be wasting a lot of power just churning through that stuff. This just blew through it. But the suspension just soaks up so much stuff. It's so active. It's not what you think of with a solid axle truck. You think it'd probably be donkey kicking. It would not be working very well, but it's just really supple. I'm sure when you look at it on video, especially if there's a little bit of slow motion added, you'll have a hard time distinguishing full-scale desert truck action from this truck in action. It really looks great in action. You can really drive it hard and push it. It's a bunch of fun. I think you'll really dig it when you guys see these things in action. how's the body roll? It rolls realistically. The amount of roll is what you would see in a full-size desert truck. It does not roll over and then flip over. You can push the truck hard into turns. I've not driven one on the street. I imagine it would probably track a little more easily there, of course, than in the dirt. But I expect Traxxas will have different setups for different terrain, because certainly a lot of guys will run this on the street. That's just the way it is with RC vehicles. No matter how off-road they are, they always wind up making speed runs down the street and around the neighborhood. But to answer your question, it's got scale body roll, which it can handle and keeps on driving. It doesn't just barrel roll if you corner it semi-hard. It really handles like a full-size desert truck. 17mm hubs, yes, it's the spline hub. How durable is it? I barrel rolled mine, not mine, the one at Traxxas a few times. It should be plenty durable. I mean, you look at the construction of it, the way it's built, it's a full fendered body. I don't see anything that's like, oh yeah, you can see where that's going to be a problem. It's very ruggedly built. Of course, to answer your question, I don't really know. I haven't put tons and tons of time on it, but given that it's got X-Max style drivetrain construction, plenty of steel in the drivetrain, steel upper links on the rear end. It's got plastic where you want parts that can flex to flex instead of breaking. Yeah, I think it's going to hold up just great. $2,200 kV motor, that's right. Just join. What's the price? $750 is the minimum advertised price, so $750 to $800, depending on where you buy. And I think we can probably wrap this up unless you guys have any more questions about it. Again, real quick, body is one piece. Body is held on by 12 screws. You do not need to take the body on and off to get to the battery. You've got two functional spare tires that go on the back here. All kinds of details on the back of the truck. I got a low battery warning. Two-frame chassis is functional. That's not a cosmetic part that just lifts off. We've got two driver figures, plenty of detailing going on inside that cockpit. Underneath, I took it off, but there's a skid plate that covers this. This is your battery compartment. Direct drive transmission, 2200 kV motor, 125 ounce-inch metal gear servo. Shaft drive to the solid rear axle, which has a gear reduction, planetary gear reduction built in back here. You can see you've got trailing arms, two shocks per corner, threaded one with a spring, and then an extra damper just like a full-size truck would have. Each front suspension arm is two-piece. CV front drive shafts, CV center shaft. These panels are removable individually. I've also heard that Traxxas will have aluminum versions of these panels, so that'll look pretty cool. The receiver's up here. It's in a waterproof box, as usual. And now there is a plug that you can take out so that if you want to rebind your receiver, you can never tell what the camera is. It's much easier to access that way. So that is the Traxxas Unlimited Desert Racer. Please look elsewhere on the Facebook feed for Car Action, or just go to caraction.com right now. You'll see a story about this truck that has got a ton of pictures. It's got some nice renders and cutaways from Traxxas, as well as all the photos I shot myself since getting the truck. I will get some videos up for you of it running now that this stuff that I wanted to keep the truck clean for is done. And it's exciting stuff from Traxxas. Pretty impressive. Pro scale, right between 1/7 and 1/8. Yeah, I think this will definitely make some waves. I think you guys will dig it. Hopefully Traxxas will have their own pages and videos up soon, so we'll be checking those out. And hope you've enjoyed this look. Let me take a last look for any more questions. When will it be out? Someone else piped in with early March. I can't confirm that, but that probably sounds about right. This truck was not hand built, or did not appear to be so at least. This looks like it came right from the factory, so these should be hitting stores soon. Sorry, Kyle, my Slash is in the garage. I did make up a photo, though, comparing the size of this to a Slash on the rccaraction.com page. How did the tires balloon up? I didn't really notice the tires ballooning much at all. The carcass is pretty thick, and it's got the dual diameter setup that Traxxas has had since the Slash. So obviously, I mean, the physics doesn't go away. I'm sure they did, balloon, a little bit. There must have been some kind of tread growth going on because this thing was really hammering. But it wasn't like, oh my goodness, look at the tires. They're pizza cutting and I'm losing control. They really stayed together nicely. Drop test. This will probably make a bunch of stuff fall off my shelves. But you know what? Let me put a battery in it. Or batteries. So there's your drop test. I'm not sure if that proves much, but it looks cool. ABS, no anti-lock braking system on this, Bernie. Do you see a gas motor? Oh, you would need an awful lot of power for this thing. I would not rule anything out, but I don't think you'll see a nitro or gas version of this guy. But I would love to be proven wrong. That'd be cool. Why is the front skids gray and black? I think they're just going for kind of a steel color. If you've ever seen the raw steel tubing on these trucks, it looks like that kind of gray, so it's a nice scale touch. Is this gas? Nope, this is electric, Renee. 2200 kV motor, VXL 6S speed control. Castle motor speed control. No, actually Traxxas does all their own electronics on this model, and also for the brushless edition trucks. They did have Castle electronics back in the day when the brushless edition E-Revo and E-Max first came out, but they now do all their own electronics. Again, this is the Traxxas Unlimited Desert Racer for people coming in late asking what that is. Trevelyan asks, how's the geometry in the front look? Fairly stout. I think it sure looks stout. I mean, it is a different look compared to what we're used to seeing in RC, because in an RC vehicle, instead of a suspension arm that comes to kind of a point, you usually have a big broad end for a hinge pin to slide through. But this has got a pivot ball top and bottom, just like the full-size trucks have. But the arm itself is really heavily boxed. One, to simulate what a full-size truck looks like, but two, of course, just for the strength in this model. But they're really thick and rugged. I don't think suspension arm durability is going to be an issue. Did I notice any weak points? No, there's nothing that jumps out like, oh yeah, that's going to be a problem. Everything is looks well braced. The suspension parts are really thick. The other thing with this truck too is that you've got a lot of energy dissipation just because it's a full fendered truck that can roll and flip like short course trucks do. You've probably discovered if you ever run open wheel stuff, they tend to be a little more fragile because the wheels are out in the breeze and they can grab onto things. A truck like this where you've got a full fendered body, I find that in tumbling kind of wrecks, they often fare better. That and because they have shorter suspension arms, there's less leverage. It does have a front sway bar, Justin. So I'm guessing it's not waterproof because the batteries are exposed. Well, the electronics are waterproof. None of the Traxxas vehicles, and as far as I know, no one else's RC vehicles are waterproof in that the whole vehicle is waterproof. You can dunk it and no water gets in. Electronics are waterproof, but any RC car or truck, you dunk it, the transmission's going to get water in it. The chassis is going to fill up with water. Everything's going to get water in it. and your screws will rust, and all that bad stuff will happen if you don't disassemble and clean and rust proof and do all those things. But it does have waterproof electronics, like all of Traxxas's other electric vehicles. So waterproof speed control and servo, and then a waterproof enclosure for the receiver. Can I see the body, asks Angel. Yes, I'll put that back on. You know what, I forget that I have to walk the bumper on. So the bumper is structural. This is part of the chassis, not just a piece tacked onto the body. So when you put the body on, you have to walk it on like this. I'm trying to look at my screen as I do it, so bear with me here, guys. There we go. So there you go with the body on. It is 4S or 6S, Adam, that's correct. 30 plus on 4S, 50 plus on 6S. It is four-wheel drive, that's right. Those rear fenders won't last long, says Jason. Again, when the body is fully mounted, you've actually got 12 screws in it. And there's a screw on each side behind the cab, 2 on the rocker panel, and 1 back here. So these aren't flopping around when you're driving the truck. The body doesn't move. Everything is held tight. So yeah, I mean, nothing is completely bomb-proof in RC, but I don't think you're going to be pulling these guys off because they're not flapping around in the breeze, and they are very well secured once you put those screws in. I took them out so I could do this video, but when you've got the 4 in the hood, 2 in the rocker panel, 2 in the cab, 1 behind each fender, that guy's not moving around. What is the name, says Andrew? This is the Traxxas Unlimited Desert Racer. Single battery. It's 1 4S battery. You can do this. Or you can put in 2 3S batteries, which I already did. They're in there. And again, I took it off for the video, but the chassis bottom is covered. There are 8 screws that hold that part on. And then this piece will cover the battery tray. How fast does it go? 30 plus on 4S, 50 plus on 6S. Is it literally a Slash on steroids? A little bit in terms of how it drives, but in terms of how it's built, absolutely not. A Slash has got lower H arms, upper camber links, 4-wheel independent suspension. This has got a solid rear axle. It's got a scale front suspension with lower A arms instead of H arms. Has an upper arm instead of a standard camber link. And the big difference, though, is the trailing arms and back with that solid rear axle. So a bit of a Slash in spirit, but certainly not in the way it's constructed. And in terms of scale detailing, not a short course truck. This is a desert racing truck. Does anyone know the weight? Yes, the weight is 13.4 pounds or 6.1 kilograms. Matt Van Stock, Yak doesn't waste any words, says, it heavy? And it is heavily built. Traxxas is certainly not looking for a lightweight truck, I don't think, here, because it does pack some heft. But it is also 6S and does not drive like a heavy truck. The thing just rockets off the line. That mass does help it stay planted and gives it that authentic suspension action and look when you're driving it. But yeah, definitely heavily constructed. It's a heavy duty machine. Super clutch, nope. Everything is accessible through the bottom. No, yeah, okay, that's a comment, not a question, sorry. Yeah, I did the drop test. You can replay this for the drop test. I do the drop test again, but I think my desk is going to collapse, so we'll take it easy. All right, so we're seeing some repeat questions. Rob Hockett says $1,000. Nope, it's I'm going to say 800 tops. The minimum advertised price is $750. How long and wide? Let's see. The length is 27.3 inches and the width is 13.6 inches. I've shown the body quite a few times, Ryan, so I'm going to say take a look back at this once we close out the live video. The body comes off with 12 screws, but you don't need to take the body off. Everything is accessed to the bottom of the chassis. But if you do want to take the body off and run it like this, it is not hard to do. And it looks pretty cool, so yeah, if you want to run it without the body, go ahead. Because I can't see what I'm doing. There you go. Any of the chassis metal. The chassis has metal upper links for the 4-link rear end. All the chassis parts are plastic, which honestly is what you want so they can flex and bounce back. If you wreck the thing, also you can't make all this stuff out of individual metal tubes and have the truck not cost $3,000. There's plenty of metal in the drivetrain, which is where you really need it for a 6S truck that weighs 13 pounds. Shock bodies are aluminum. Of course, you've got metal CV drive shafts and some other metal parts. But the hub carrier suspension arms, the axle housing, lower trailing arms, all those parts are plastic for durability because you want those to flex instead of breaking or flex instead of bending and staying bent. They're going to spring back to shape. That and it lets you get the realistic shapes of a full-size desert truck. If you had to machine all these parts out of steel or aluminum, again, you'd have an outrageously expensive truck that would probably weigh twice as much. And then you're back in the days of all aluminum, T-Maxes back in the 2000s, where you'd have a 30-pound vehicle that looked cool but didn't perform. So I think Traxxas and manufacturers in general tend to be pretty good about using the right materials in the right places. Because metal is not the best for everything. Drivetrain, yes, and there's a lot of steel in the drivetrain. If you go to rccarAction.com, I've got the axle taken apart. There's cutaways of the direct drive center transmission. Traxxas puts the beef and the metal where it needs it, but the plastics are used well and appropriately. All right, I'm going to wrap it up, guys. I appreciate you hanging out with us on Facebook. Please do go to rccarAction.com for a bunch more photos on this truck. I will get this guy out and run it and get some videos up. If not tomorrow, certainly over the weekend. I wanted to keep it pristine for Facebook Live and, of course, to get the photos in the can for Car Action. But I'm pretty excited to get it out there. I've driven one at Traxxas. Looking forward to driving my personal truck, this one here. Nice perk of the job, get to check out this super cool truck. But expectations are high. I had a blast with the well worn out test runner that Traxxas headquarters had. It drives just like a full-size desert racing truck. You get that authentic chassis roll and the way the suspension works. You can really push it deep in the corners. You're going to be hanging it out all the way in counter steering, just like a full-size desert truck. The Traxxas stability management definitely comes in handy. I found myself dialing that up a little bit so I could look like a super pro, even though I had some electronic assistance helping me keep that rear end in check. But you really do a lot of your steering right here with the trigger. It's just like the real thing. I've never driven the real thing, but if you've ever seen sprint cars or desert trucks or short course trucks where they corner sideways constantly, that's what this is like, and it makes it easy to do between the engineering of the truck and the way the suspension is just like the real thing, so it works like the real thing, and the electronic stability system to help you out if you need it. It's a really fun and different driving experience. All right, I'm going to wrap it up, guys. I'm going to hit the button here. Sure appreciate it. Thank you.